We're going to learn a Sicha that was said 70 years ago, Beis Kislev. That's 70 years ago and one day, 1954, at a Kabolas Ponim. So the Rebbe was talking about Chasana and Simcha Ava wedding and so on. It's known the saying that my father-in-law said and transmitted from the Alter Rebbe, that one has to live with the times. Usually, in the colloquial, that meant you gotta be more modern. But the Alter Rebbe meant it just the opposite. The meaning of those words, like the Chassidim clarified and figured out afterwards. They didn't understand initially what the Alter Rebbe meant, and they went to the Mittler Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe explained them what the Alter Rebbe meant. That living with the times means lichyos in Parshas HaShavua shekoidim v'loimdim bezman zeh. To live with the Parsha of the week that we read in the Torah and we study in this time. This means to say, though thousands of years have already passed since the giving of the Torah, still in all, Torah is everlasting. The inner content of saying that the Torah is everlasting. What is the real meaning behind that statement? That every matter in Torah matters, and it is a lesson and directive in all times and in all places, and specifically and especially one has to study every week the topics of the Torah. We have to derive a lesson every week from the matters and topics in the Torah that we are studying in this week. Though hundreds of years ago, over 1,000 years, it was already established to Bnei Yisrael the order of reading of the Parshas every week. In other words, which Parsha will be read in which week. So seemingly, this is like old stuff. Still in all, Mikol Malkim Shaychusa HaMyuchedes Shel Kol Parsha. Lazman Shekoidim Noisav, the connection, the unique connection of every Parsha to the time that we read it, He Betokva B'chol Azmanim B'chol HaMakomis, is in its full force and full strength in all times and in all places, meaning Hainu Shekol Me'ura Yesh Le Shayches La Parsha Shekoidim B'Torah B'Zman Zeh, that every event has to do and is associated with the Parsha that is being read in this particular, the Parsha in the Torah that we're reading at this time, at this occasion. V'yuvin, this will be understood, according to the idea, based on the concept of divine providence, kefishin is bar, b'Torahs HaBaal Shem Tov, the way it is explained in the teaching of the Baal Shem Tovs, v'niskabel b'chol tfutzis Yisrael, it was accepted by all the whole scattered congregation of Yisrael. So in other words, it's not just Chassidim accept this idea of Hashgacha Pratis, but even those that don't necessarily identify with the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, Shekol HaMoroi Shemisrachshem Ba'olam, all events that occur in the world, Hem B'Hashgacha Pratis Ha'idei HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Orei Olam, they are by divine providence through Hashem, the creator of the world. Since he knows the future, to such a degree it's beyond knowing the future. Time itself is past, present, and future all at the same time. He created and established in such a manner every matter, in every time and every place, will be associated with the Parsha of the week. So now the Rebbe is going to talk about the lessons of the Parsha of this week, and like I said, mentioned before, I believe, this Sicha was said by a Kabolas Ponim. So the Rebbe is going to speak about the marriage of Yaakov and certain things that we derive from this in halacha from the marriage of Yaakov. Base, line 14. Parsha Shavuot Mesuper Oidus Nesui Yaakov. In the Parsha of the week, it's related about the marriage of Yaakov. Hanisuyim Arishayna Sha'atoyim Mesaperes Beprotis Eseder Hanisuyim Atzman. It's the first marriage that the Torah relates in detail the actual order or certain events that occurred associated with the marriage. The first marriage of a circumcised Jew that's recorded in the Torah is the marriage of Yitzchak. In connection with the marriage of Yitzchak, it's only spoken about the preparation for the marriage. That Avraham Avinu sent Eliezer, told him, I don't want to have him marry anyone from the Bnei Canaan, and he sent Eliezer to his family, Lavan and Besulel, and how he brought Rivka, how he discovered her, the gifts he gave her, etc., how Yitzchak brought her into the tent and saw that she was just like his mother, and so on. But the actual marriage, what took place in regards to the marriage, that's not related concerning Yitzchak. As opposed to the first marriage that the Torah relates in detail, the order of the marriage itself, Heim Shel Yaakov is about Yaakov, Bechira Avos, the chosen one of the forefathers, and from this we derive many halachas concerning how a Jewish marriage is supposed to take place. So now the Rebbe is going to mention about two of the various halachas that are derived from the marriage of Yaakov. Pasuk Malish Vazois from the Pasuk, complete this week, and then afterwards you will marry Rachel, even though he tricked him to marry Leah. He said, complete this week, and then you'll marry Rachel. Lameidim Shnei Dinim, we derive two halachas. Aleph, Hadin Shel Shivas Yemei Mishta, the halacha, first of all, that there's 7 days of celebration, that we make a celebration every single day of the 7 days of the marriage. That's why he said after the 7 days. And another thing we derive from this base, Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, that we do not combine one joy with another joy. The joy of a wedding is not supposed to be done and arranged during the time of another joy. Like it says in Tosfos, the reason is because we need that his heart should be open and clear, totally devoted to this joy, as the Rebbe will explain about this soon. So for that reason, we're also going to mention later on in the Sicha, during Chol Hamoed, you're not supposed to make a wedding during Chol Hamoed, because in the middle of Chol Hamoed, we have the Simcha of Yom Tov, so we're not supposed to mix together the Simcha of Yom Tov with the Simcha of a wedding. We're going to skip a few paragraphs. We're going to go on to the next page, and we're going to go into paragraph in line 11, beginning with Ois Dalet. Bitochon hanefesh yichol l'slius shtei svaros. In the Rebbe speaks about that the reason one cannot combine one joy with another joy has to do with the natural way how a person processes and relates to joy. And there are two reasons or two approaches to how the inner workings of our emotions work. Aleph, when a person is anyway in a certain state, in a certain emotional state, in a certain type of power of his soul being revealed, Kigoin, for example, Tnua Shel Simcha, if he's in a state of joy, for example, despite the fact that the joy is because of a particular cause and reason, it also assists to a joy from something else, because it has a common denominator. They are both joy. In following that reasoning, one would not have a problem to mix two different joyous things because we would do it together. We would do both aspects of joy because it's not a problem to have two different things. They would complement each other. There's a similar idea that Alter Rebbe also brings in Tanya about that if a person is anyway sad, so he should use it for tshuva and things like that, because he's anyway in that emotional state. Another approach, another way how the soul works is contrary to this idea. Line 14, Beis, when a person is in a type of state of joy caused by a particular reason, by a particular cause, not only does this joy, which is caused by reason A, not assist and complement a joy that's caused by reason B, Allah adra, but just the opposite, mafri Allah. They disrupt each other. They disturb each other. It causes an internal confusion. Am I joyous because of this? Am I joyous because of that? I can't just combine the two. Though the outcome, the result of both of them is the same type of concept. They're both joy. Still in all, since the causes are different, therefore one disturbs its fellow. So therefore, since one reason disturbs its fellow, this is one reason, this is another reason, so both reasons cannot be together, so the outcome of that cause, the joy as well, will disrupt the other joy. And the Rebbe concludes that from the story of Yaakov, we know that the second approach is the correct approach. Line 18, from the pasuk that says, first complete this entire week of Sheva Brachas for Leah, and then you'll marry Rachel. We derive like the second approach. Therefore, we know the halacha that one may not combine one joy with another joy. And now he focuses on specifically the joy of chasna and kala. Line 20. Simchas chasna and kala tzricha liyos kechol simcha shel mitzvah, as the joy of a chasna and kala has to be like every joy of a mitzvah. Simcha kazu, such a type of joy, uba'ofen kazan, in such a type of manner, sha'adam yekulei sham, the person needs to be completely invested in that experience. Shekain mitzvah inyana kiyum retzayni yisbarach, because what's the idea of a mitzvah? The fulfillment of Hashem's will. V'tzarech ha'adam la'asoisa b'retzayni hu. And when a person is fulfilling Hashem's will, he needs to do it with his will. In other words, he has to invest himself in it as well. As the Pirkei Avos says, Asei retzayni ki retzayncha. Make his will as if it's your own will. And when the person invests his will there, so he says in line 22, Va'aza Adam Kulei Sham, then the person is entirely there. Like the statement of the Baal Shem Tov, wherever the place of the person is, that's where he is located. For that reason, the joy has to be of the entire person's soul. He cannot leave himself open. I'm feeling joy from this now, but I have room for other experiences. Since we know that the joy of chasna and kala has to be the entire joy of the soul, we derive from something that occurred before. They're giving you a Torah that in the nature and the characteristic of the soul, one joy disturbs a different joy because a person is fully immersed in that one joy. Therefore, we derive from this that one cannot combine the joy of one mitzvah with the joy of a different mitzvah. Kiven Shim Valvelas as a Simcha Shal Mitzvah Zu, since it disturbs the Simcha of this mitzvah. We're going to skip another few paragraphs. The next page, the third page of our copies, we're going to skip to the third paragraph. Ois Vav, line 11. Chodesh Kislev hu Chodesh HaGeula. The month of Kislev is the month of redemption. The Chodesh HaNisim, it's a month of miracles. There was the miracle of Chanukah, there was the miracle of Yutas Kislev, of the Alter Rebbe's release from prison, the miracle of Yud Kislev, the Mittler Rebbe's release of prison. In our generation, this is before that event, but still, Rosh Chodesh Kislev is the miracle of the Rebbe's recovery. So he says, the Chodesh Kislev is a month of redemption, a month of miracles. And in this month, our Rabbeim, our Nesiim, revealed to us the inner part of the Torah much more and a much broader way than it was revealed beforehand. Meaning that what we have over here is that the inner part of the Torah was revealed prior to Yud Kislev, for example. But only after the imprisonment, we know that the Alter Rebbe was told by the Mezritcher Magid and the Baal Shem Tov when they visited him in prison that not only should you not reduce your revealing of the inner part of the Torah, but when you get out of prison, you should reveal more of the inner part of the Torah. And as I've mentioned on previous occasions, that you can actually see in the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe wrote and said prior to his imprisonment to after the imprisonment, it's literally occupies more pages, it's longer. So that was a broadening on Yutas Kislev, and in general throughout the month of Kislev were occasions for the broadening of the learning of the inner part of Torah. What does the inner part of Torah contribute? By Dezeh, line 12, through this Netois of Chayes, Vislavas, Gam Begalia, Torah, Bekiyam HaMitzvahs, through this broadening of the inner part of the Torah was added vitality and passion and excitement also in the revealed part of the Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs. My studying of Gemara and Halacha and Chumash and my fulfillment of mitzvahs are impacted and are more excited and more passionate because of Chassidus. Eine doime limud agali the Torah v'achayis bekim ha-mitzvahs v'atketitzom ez ha-hidur lefnei yediyas pnimis ha-Torah la'agabi achri yediyas pnimis ha-Torah. It's incomparable, the study of the revealed part of the Torah and the vitality and excitement and fulfillment of mitzvahs. And that excitement in the fulfillment of mitzvahs causes one to add in hidur mitzvah much more. As Chassidim were always known to go to the greatest degree beyond the letter of the law, to add in mitzvahs, to do things not just limited to what it says in Shulchan Aruch. And that is impassioned by the knowledge of the inner part of the Torah. Ha'idiyah shel pnimis ha-Torah nesenes chayes v'simcha gam benigla. The knowledge of the inner part of the Torah gives vitality and joy also in the revealed part of Torah, in Gemara, in Halacha, and so on. V'gam b'mais ha-mitzvahs, and also gives vitality, energy, excitement, and joy also in the action of mitzvahs. Valderech hanal b'signa, similar to what the Rebbe spoke about earlier, and using the same language. Hareza b'chinas nisgalsa primis ha-Torah v'nischacha halacha, that when the inner part of the Torah was revealed, so the halacha became a chidush in halacha. What's it mean, a chidush in halacha? So halacha is also from the word halicha, progress, traveling. Eifane halicha ba'avodas Hashem, that manners in traveling, in progressing in the service of Hashem, came about so much more after the revelation of the inner part of the Torah. Those things that before the inner part of the Torah was revealed, one could not attain them. Milvad Yechides Gula, unless there was very special people, or someone needed to toil very greatly in different paths and roads to be able to attain the great levels that one had to attain or wanted to attain. But that was all the difficulty, or the individual being a limited to think to individuals, was prior to the revelation of the inner part of Torah. Hare ata nizgalsa Torah v'nischacha alicha b'derech hamelech. Now Torah became revealed, meaning the inner part of Torah was revealed, and it was now a new path in the way of the king was nischadish. Asher kol Yisrael yicholim lagia lecholze, that all Yidden could reach the levels that prior to that would take a lot of work or was only for specific, unique individuals. Through the study of the inner part of the Torah and following its directives. And now he's going to bring this to the idea of joy, line 20. Included in this is also the idea of joy. This was one of the demands of the Baal Shem Tov. Ivdus Havai b'simcha, you should serve Hashem with joy. Even before the Baal Shem Tov, that it was also part of the inner teachings of the Torah. As it's known, Arizal said that why did he merit the Ruach HaKodesh that he had? That was Ayidei Simcha Shel Mitzvah, through joy of a mitzvah. So now, as we know, this let's skip over to line 29. Let's skip over to the second from the last paragraph. Concerning marriage, our Chacham said, a man and a woman, if they married, so then the Shechina, when they're married, the Shechina rests between them. Hashem took his name, divided it in two, and made it rest amongst them. Yud Be'ish, Hashem inserted the letter Yud in the man and the husband. Vehei Be'isha, and the letter Hey put in the woman, the letter Hey of Isha. So when they live the way they're supposed to live together, when Ish v'Isha come together in the way they're supposed to, so the Shechina is amongst them. That's the idea of drawing down the Yudke of Shem Yudke Vovke. These days, in the Yudke ubehelam, the level of Hashem's name known as Yudke is concealed. As it says, Ki Yod al Case Yudke. I place my hand on an oath on the case of Yudke. The simple meaning of case is on the throne of Yudke, the throne of Hashem. He's swearing by Hashem's throne. But the inner meaning is case from the word covering, kisui. She'inyan the Yudke u'ba'ofen shel kisui v'helam, that at present Yudke is in the way of concealed. It's covered over. That's where it says that Hanistoris Lashem Elokeinu, that goes on the level of Yudke. V'haniglois, it says Vovke. The letters Vovke of Yudke Vovke is what's revealed. So the Yudke is concealed. Top of the next page. Through building a home in Jewry, on the foundations of Torah mitzvah, neir mitzvah v'Torah oir, that the mitzvah is likened to a candle and the Torah is likened to the fire. Koilol gam hamoyer sheb'Torah zeh u'pnimis ha'Torah, also included the luminary of the Torah that they're basing their homes on, the inner part of the Torah. Azayin nitna Torah v'nischat ha'alacha, so then the Torah is given. And there's a new halacha, shagam bechinas Yudke nimshachas u'balamata. Even though Yudke normally, we said, is concealed at this time till Mashiach comes, but through the Ish v'Isha following in the ways of Neir Mitzvah v'Torah Oir, and they have the luminary of the Torah, which is the inner part of the Torah, so they draw down the Yudke below, B'dor Yeshorim Yivorach, in a generation of straight ones that will be blessed. In other words, in having children that are following in Torah mitzvahs, Shezeu inyan vavke, the idea of Dori Shonim Mivoidach, that we have children that are following in the ways of Torah mitzvahs, that is the letters of vavke. The second part of this Fabrengen or Sicha the Rebbe is talking about, so he says in Ois Ches, in continuation to what we spoke about previously concerning the rule that one does not combine one joy with another joy, because one joy disturbs the other. This rule is only when the joy is in its full force, during the strong part of the joy. When is the full force of the joy? At the beginning of the joy. But the continuation of the joy during the 7 days of the Sheva Brachas, there you can have another Simcha as well. Therefore, we find an interesting halach. Though we cannot make the joy of a marriage during Chol Hamoed, as I mentioned earlier, and how much more someone may not do so on Yom Tov. Why? Because you're not allowed to combine the joy of the wedding with the joy of Yom Tov or Chol Hamoed. Kol Makom still in all. Mutter lasei simchas nisuyim koidem hayom tov. You're allowed. We do not say that a person should get married 7 days before Yom Tov. No earlier or no later than 7 days before Yom Tov, because then the Sheva Brach is going to come out in the middle of Yom Tov. No, that's not a problem. You can make a wedding the night before Yom Tov, even though the Sheva Brachas are going to continue in the middle of Yom Tov. And that is actually a custom and halacha, and this is what people do always. That we will make marriages during the first half of the months of Tishrei and Nisan. So too in the month of Sivan before Shavuos. Even if the continuation of the 7 days of the Sheva Brachas will come out in the middle of Yom Tov. Why? Because the primary joy is only the beginning of the marriage. The reason for this is, like we said before, the rule that one cannot mix one joy but another joy is only when the joy is in its full force and power, at the beginning of the joy. As opposed to the continuation of the Simcha, Gam Simcha Cheres. Even another joy, does not disturb, but rather it increases and it assists in this joy. Line 16, the Rebbe concluded, we're asking from Hashem that there should be joyous occasions amongst Yidden. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe was by Kabolas Ponim of one wedding. And he said, in this very week, there's going to be another wedding, in middle of the Sheva Brachas of this wedding. By the way, when the Rebbe said the Sicha in 1953, Lubavitch in America was not like huge like it is now, that like every night you have another wedding. I guess this was like a little bit of a rare event that you had two weddings in such proximity one to another, when I'm sure in those years in the 50s, there could be weddings very well spread apart, and maybe have just a few weddings during an entire year, perhaps. So this was like something to note, something unusually good, that they had one Simcha like overlapping the Sheva Brachas of another, a Chasna overlapping the Sheva Brachas of another wedding. The Rebbe continues, line 17. Not only Simcha achas einem avavel Simcha shniya, that one joy does not disturb the other joy, al adrab, just the opposite. Shemasayas ba Simcha, it assists in the Simcha. And the Rebbe now brings a very interesting thing that explains another interesting medrash that we know. So he says in Istes, we can explain what we find in the medrashim, in the medrash of Psikta or the medrash Tanchuma. It says, Be'esrim v'chamisha beKislev, the 25th of Kislev, the date of Chanukah, Nigmara Meleches HaMishkan, the actual construction of the Mishkan was concluded. After Yom Kippur, within the first year of them going out of Mitzrayim, they went out of Mitzrayim in the year of in Pesach 2448. After Yom Kippur of 2449, like a half a year later, was when Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the instructions for the building of the Mishkan, and it took them from like that period after Yom Kippur till the 25th of Kislev, through the end of Tishrei, Cheshvan, and most of Kislev, to finish and put together all the parts for the Mishkan. But it remained folded up, because the Mishkan was meant to be taken down and put up, so it wasn't erected until Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan was like many months later. Why did Hashem wait all the way to Rosh Chodesh Nisan if the Mishkan was ready already on the 25th of Kislev, which is also has to do with the idea of Chanukah and so on, that's Chanukah's HaMishkan, Chanukah's HaMizbeach, and so on. So the Medrash says, Mipnei shechoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'arev simchas HaMishkan b'simchas hayoim shenoel b'Yitzchak. Hashem wanted to mix together the joy of the Mishkan with the joy of Yitzchak's birthday. So the Rebbe is going to ask, based on the rule that we've been talking about in this whole Sicha, that one does not combine one joy with another joy, why did the Eibishter do this? Line 22, seemingly it's not understood. This is going against the rule that one does not mix joy with another joy. But based on what we just now said, that if we're not at the full force of the joy, at the initial part of the joy, we're only at the continuation of the joy, so then one could have both joys together because it's not going to disturb it. 23. V'abir b'zad explanation. This is al pi ha'amar sha'klal she'ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha ein ela b'negel le'ikar v'toik v'simcha, according to the rule that we do not mix one joy with another joy, is only concerning the primary level and the full strength of the joy, but it's not when we're talking about the extension of the joy. Moving, it's understood. When is the primary and full power of the joy of the birthday of Yitzchak? It's in that year that Yitzchak was actually born. The Mishkan was erected many years later. As opposed to when the birthday of Yitzchak repeats itself annually. This is only a continuation of the joy. So therefore, it doesn't go in opposition to the rule that one may not mix joy with joy. So the Rebbe says, but we know the Chassidus, and the Rebbe always talks about it, that everything that occurs again, it repeats itself again, and it happens again. The Amshachas are here again. So he says in line 26, though there's the idea that these days are remembered, and by remembering them, they are occurring all over again. What does that mean? Kepirish HaRizal, like the explanation of the Arizal is Kasher Neskarim, Shemaskirim in Yezalamata. When one mentions and remembers this event down here below, whatever it is, a Yom Tov, a celebration, a marking of an event that occurred in previous generations, So then the thing occurs again above, and it's drawn down below. So why do you tell me that it's only an extension of the joy of the first birthday? The first birthday, and that first birthday is happening every year. So the Rebbe says no. Despite the fact that it is recurring annually, moving, it's understood. This is not perfect. It's only it's not perfect. It's not complete, and this is only a ray of the original Simcha when Yitzchak was initially born. The joy in the month that Yitzchak was born, does not disturb the joy of erecting of the Mishkan. But just the opposite, Messiah's law, it assists the joy. One joy assists the other. Therefore, Hashem awaited the month that Yitzchak was born in, the month of Nisan, to mix one joy with another joy. Similar to what's brought down, that one always they come out that a meritorious day is eventually going to be meritorious in many things for other things as well. Kislev, for example, was the Yartzeit of Mizrach Magid, and then it became the Yom HaGeula of the Alter Rebbe, and so on. Then he goes on and says, Al Kushya Anal, next page. Al Kushya Anal, on the above mentioned question. Eich Dachu. How did they push off the erecting of the Mishkan to the month that Yitzchak was born in? Since we do not mix one joy with another joy. There's another explanation of how that doesn't violate that rule. When we talk about not mixing one joy with another joy, we're talking about a joy that's connected with the physical. Mishte, party, achilo, shtia, eating and drinking. Masha'enkim b'simcha ruchnis, as opposed to spiritual joy. Ein simcha achas mitvalvelos l'chaverta. One joy does not disturb its fellow joy. Va'adrabe misayas. Just the opposite, it assists. So when you're talking about a wedding is a physical joy. But here, since the joy in erecting the Mishkan was a spiritual joy, it had no connection with the physical. There was no meal, there was no party, there was no rejoicing in the physical sense. The loika simcha beis hakamas beis hamikdash, not like the joy when Shlomo HaMelech erected the beis hamikdash. Simcha was connected with meals of parties and rejoicing. For that reason, they had to make a distinction actually between the joy of the Beis Hamikdash and the joy of Sukkot that it came out in. But over here, when it came to the Mishkan, not only the Mishkan, but also also the day that the rejoicing of the day that Yitzchak was born. Every year, his birthday every year is not connected with a party. It's not connected with rejoicing. Therefore, since we're dealing all with spiritual types of joy, so Hashem waited with erecting the Mishkan for the month that Yitzchak was born in, to actually mix those two spiritual joys together. Since when we're talking about a spiritual joy, not only does it not disturb one another, just the opposite, when we're talking about a spiritual joy, each one assists the other. So now the Rebbe is going to explain how come. Why is that so? That there's a difference between a joy that's expressed in physical versus a joy that's a spiritual joy. He says in Ois Yud Aleph, line 13, the explanation of the reason why in a spiritual joy, one joy does not disturb the other, and just the opposite, Messiahs, it assists. Isa b'Gemara, it's brought down the Gemara, like Midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Midas Basar V'Dam, that Hashem's measure is not like a measure of flesh and blood. Midas Basar V'Dam Klei Reikon Machzik, Malei Eina Machzik. In the measure of a human being of flesh and blood, when you have an empty vessel, then it can contain things in it. But if it's a full vessel, it cannot take anything in. Midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eina Kain, but Hashem's measure is not that way. Malei Machzik, if it's a full vessel, it can contain. Reikon Eina Machzik, but an empty vessel cannot contain anything in it. What does that mean? It's explained in many places in Chassidus, also in the Mamorim of my father-in-law, also in the Mamorim that were already printed, because in 1950s, not a lot of the Mamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe still had to be printed. It's a difference between the physical and versus spiritual. When we're talking about the physical, an empty vessel can contain something. A full vessel cannot contain. Spiritually, a full vessel can contain, and an empty vessel cannot contain anything. In the physical, a full vessel cannot contain something. The physical is an existence. It occupies space. Therefore, practically speaking, when it's a full vessel, so the thing that's filling the vessel is taking up all the space in the vessel. It cannot contain any more. That item that's there doesn't allow for another item to be there. In an even inner, more deeper explanation, Gashmis eina inyane shel adam. The physical is not what the person is about. He's not essentially a physical being that's only a container. He's really spiritual. The physical, which is not what a person's about, this occupies space, and it disturbs anything else, and doesn't allow for the person's own things to have the attention that he needs to focus on it. He has too much things to focus on what matters. But in the spiritual line 22, Mole Machzik, a full vessel holds and can contain. Because the spiritual is what the person is all about. The Chazal say, I was only created to serve my Maker. It doesn't occupy excess space that doesn't allow for anything else. It doesn't take up all the space in the room. He can contain, it can become totally one with them and becomes one. The spiritual on its own, that's his very being, does not occupy any place. Let's skip over to the bottom of the page. The Rebbe speaks about that this is also on line 29. The general idea of Torah mitzvahs, that it's a revelation the way it is from Hashem's essence. It's an existence that does not occupy any space. The Inyan Zed, this idea that a spiritual thing can allow for other things, Mabia Mishnah Begimel Tevis, the Mishnah expresses with 3 words. Mitzvah gereres mitzvah. One mitzvah drags another mitzvah in its wake. Kasher Mekayim mitzvah, when we fulfill a mitzvah, not only does the mitzvah not satisfy the person. It doesn't cause, I have no room anymore, I'm full, I have too much of this mitzvah, and I have no more room and energy to fulfill another mitzvah. Allah adrab, just the opposite. Mitzvah gereres mitzvah, that one mitzvah drags another mitzvah in its wake. Ki beruchnis, because in the spiritual, ein inyan echad mevav l'chaveirei, one thing does not disrupt and disturb another thing. Va'adrab b'misayeh loy, it assists him. Let's skip over to Yud Beis, line 4. Amnam, after Klolos in Natoida Mitzvah Su Inyan Ruchni Shalomai Legamri Afil Metfisus Makim Ruchni, even though the idea of Torah Mitzvah is a spiritual thing that's completely beyond even the taking up spiritual space, the important is Tzrichim Lahamshich Zois Ba'aguf and Avshabamis V'chelke Ba'olam. A person needs to draw this down into his body, into his animal soul, and into his allotted portion in this world that he's supposed to elevate. That's the order that was given after Matan Torah. Like the expression of our Chachamim, the Torah was not given to the angels above, the angels of service. Before the Torah was given, a person could act either like a malach, meaning totally removed from this world, or he could be like a human being, engaging with the world. Once the Torah was given, that's what the Chazal is saying, once the Torah was given, one has to act like a person. And here is going to bring a very interesting anecdote from something that the Frierdiker Rebbe said concerning the Alter Rebbe. So he says in line 8, once during a fabrengen or a meal of the Frierdiker Rebbe when he was in the city of Atvatsk, where Tamchet Mimim moved, when the Frierdiker Rebbe moved out of Russia, sheyesh svara, there is a reason to think and believe Sharabeinu Hazaken hayenoig lisanis mishabes l'Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe would have the custom to fast from Shabbos to Shabbos. Means he would break his fast, obviously, once a day at night, but generally he would not eat a whole week except nighttime breaking the fast. And even when he broke the fast, it was only with a slice of bread, and that was it. That's what people said as svara in the presence of the Frierdiker Rebbe about the Alter Rebbe. And first of all, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I hadn't heard such a story. And afterwards he added, according to what the Frierdiker Rebbe heard about the Alter Rebbe, that all that he did in his service reflected spiritual levels above. This story doesn't make sense. In the Chumash it's brought down concerning what the Yidden ate in the desert, that in the evenings you will eat, and in the morning you will be satiated. So, and that was reflective of spiritual levels, and therefore the Alter Rebbe would reflect that as well in his own life, because he mimicked the spiritual levels above. Therefore, there is no room for the general idea of fasts and afflictions. From time to time, as a tikkun, maybe the Alter Rebbe would have done it. You can't say that this was a constant thing that the Alter Rebbe always did. In a similar vein, the Rebbe continues, line 14, it's known, the Baal Shem Tov wrote to his disciple, the one who wrote the Sefer called Toldos Yaakov Yosef. He's known as Baal HaToldos, like the Alter Rebbe is known as Baal HaTanya. So he wrote to him, he shouldn't fast. Kivin sheseder avodah tzarich li is ima guf davke, since the order of avodah has to be engaged with the body. Like the Baal Shem Tov explained in the pasuk, when you will see the donkey of your enemy, you should assist him, and the donkey of your enemy is talking about the body and the animal soul. We shouldn't break it, Baal Shem Tov said, through fasts and afflictions, but we should work with it. So the Rebbe goes on line 17, so the question therefore arises, Mechad Gis, on the one hand, we are being demanded to be involved and to influence the allotted portion that a person has in this world. On the other hand, to draw down spirituality that's even beyond of occupying any spiritual place. So the Rebbe says, how do we live in both worlds simultaneously? So he says in line 19, the advice to be able to bridge the gap that it's in this particular scenario is inyan simcha, the idea of joy. Not just any joy, but in a way that we combine one joy with another joy. Through combining one joy with another joy, when it's a spiritual joy, we said, so then there's an increase in joy. The order of joy in dancing is, while dancing, a person raises his foot from the earth. He is rising from matters of the earth and physicality. Then measure for measure, just like this person is rising up in a state of joy, so they raise him up from above. Hashem raises him up from the materialism, from the physicality, from the earthiness to spirituality, into true spirituality. Until it goes and illuminates till the day is appropriate, and you don't need any artificial illumination. This was all said by the Kabolas Ponim, and then Achrei Siddur Kedushim, afterwards the Rebbe was Mesader Kedushim, the Rebbe did the whole Seder of the Kedushim. Terem Tzeisei, before the Rebbe left the place of the Chuppah, Amar Kvatus Admar Shlita, the Rebbe said, Yiratzen should be the will of Hashem, Sheyekuyim HaYiyud Meheirachol Yisham Bar Yehuda B'chutz Yerushalayim Kal Sasim Kal Simcha Kal Chasim Kal Kala. It should be fulfill the promise and was foretold that quickly will be heard in the cities of Yehuda and the outskirts of Yerushalayim the sound of rejoicing and happiness, and the sound of a chas and the sound of a kala. Aidei Mashiach Tzidkenu Imheru Meinu Mamish, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, speedily in our days Mamish.